Hi, everybody. Mitch Tab, I'm here. Thanks for joining me today for this week's Security News Update. In the Security and Privacy Alerts Department, vendors don't always necessarily tell the truth. This is one of the reasons why you want a third-party security audit of your vendors. So the company WebWork Tracker, rather, is a cloud-based tool that captures screenshots for remote workers. Basically, it's a nanny, a babysitter to make sure that remote workers are actually working. So it captures all kinds of data. And also, if you're in the hourly billable services business, it helps them do the billings. So they claim that all this stuff is stored securely in the Amazon cloud. Well, apparently part of that is true. It is stored in the Amazon cloud. The secure part, not so much. Apparently it was in an S3 bucket. It was not encrypted. It was not password protected. And researchers were able to find it and download it. And they have all of the screenshots and time logs publicly visible. State attorneys general could sue them for violating state consumer protection laws by falsely claiming that they were doing things that they weren't doing. But also the clients themselves may be sued for breaking state privacy laws, because it doesn't matter whether the vendor told you that they were encrypting stuff. If they actually weren't doing it, it doesn't matter what they told you. So that's a word for the wise on your vendor cyber risk management program. And we can certainly help you build and maintain a vendor cyber risk management program. So if you need help with that, please contact us. In the CMMC Q&A department, I'm just going to pick one out of a whole bunch this week. What about working from home? And the answer is there's a couple different answers there. First of all, if your contract or your DD-254 says you can't work from home, then that's game over. Nothing else matters. Otherwise, CUI is the controlled unclassified information is likely allowed at home, but you should verify with your customer if you have any questions about it. And that is dependent on whether it's locked up when it's not in use, and whether people can't see your screen, and whether or not you have a place where if you have sensitive conversations on the phone, you cannot be overheard. But paper CUI is a challenge. And so what you might want to do is say, and that includes, by the way, notes from meetings where CUI is discussed. You might want to say only electronic CUI is allowed from home and no paper CUI. That would make life a whole bunch easier to implement. In the reference department, China is getting ahead of the power curve. They know that the next president is likely to issue some kind of sanction. They don't know what they're going to do, sanctions, tariffs, whatever. So they just started the battle ahead of time, and they've added dozens of American companies to its export control list, which they say is to safeguard national security, which is kind of what the next administration is going to say. And, I think part of that is clearly to send the message to the next administration: if you overreact, we will also, and this will get ugly quickly. They also sanctioned 10 defense contractors for military sales to Taiwan. That probably won't have much of an impact because, they'll sell to China. And they're adding them to what they call the unreliable entities list. So, the new administration indicated that it was only kidding about universal tariffs on imports. Partly that's because they realized that adding 20% the cost of most consumer goods probably would not be very popular and certainly wouldn't help inflation. So anyway, this is a game, it's just the way the game is played. Don't get too upset yet. Wait till see what actually happens. And as your parents used to say, it's all fun until someone puts their eye out. Well, this is kind of one of those things. But it is possible, and it may even likely, that it will affect your IT supply chain, because a lot of products are made in China. So you might want to consider stocking up really quickly, although we're getting very close to the new administration coming into power. So you may or may not be able to do that in time. And you also may want to plan for extended delivery times, because if US-based companies can't get components from China, that's going to be problematic too. In the software and hardware department, Nvidia, who's known for making these really fast chips that are used for AI models learning, said they're going to release a new computer that is designed for AI in May. It's priced at $3,000. It's pretty reasonable. It will embed the GB10 Grace Blackwell chip, which is one of their high-end AI chips. Their dream is that every data scientist will have one of these computers on their desk. They claim it will be able to run locally a single large language model with up to 200 billion parameters. That's kind of like Meta's open source Llama model. And two machines going to be connected together with a proprietary cable that will allow it to run 405 billion dollar parameter. I'm sorry, that one is the size of Meta's large language model. So you could run a single instance of Meta's open source large language model on your desktop, or probably put under your desk because it'll keep your feet warm in the winter, no doubt. In the important issues / patches department, the question is Meta going to become the next dumpster fire like Twitter? Don't know. But in a concession to the next president, Zuckerberg announced that he will eliminate fact checkers in Facebook and all of their products. And so, are the advertisers going to flee because they don't want to be part of that dumpster fire? We're already seeing a lot of really cute, designed to be cute. Zuckerberg dies at 36 of coronavirus, and all kinds of stuff, which is designed to make a point that if you don't fact check well, you may get some interesting stuff on your site. We're going to see what happens here. And the other challenge they've got, of course, is that while Zuckerberg is pandering to the next president because he doesn't want sanctions from the administration, which I understand, there are other countries which are not so entertained by that whole conversation. And so do we wind up having two Facebooks, one for the United States and one for other countries where fact checking is, or not fact checking is, very, very expensive for Mark? So don't know. SonicWall says that you should patch. There's an exploitable SSL VPN bug in their firewalls. If you are using SonicWall to do an SSL VPN, and it's rated at 8.2 out of 10, it's exploitable for customers that have the VPN feature turned on. And they're saying it's being exploited. It is an authentication bypass bug, meaning you can bypass the requirement to log in, which is kind of the purpose of that. In the legislative and legal department, the FBI's dream of no encryption is it finally dead in the water. I at first say never, but since the early 90s, the FBI has been pandering to Congress, trying to get them to ban encryption. Congress has never bought off on that one. But I understand their viewpoint, right? If things aren't encrypted, it's a lot easier for them to see, bad things happening and obviously good things happening, but it's easier for them to do that. But in light of the fact that, China and North Korea and Russia and whoever else have been hacking the crap out of us, and in particular, the Chinese attack on at least, they're admitting 9 telecom carriers, including AT&T and Verizon, and maybe as many as 100 telecom carriers. The FBI and CISA is saying end-to-end encryption is your friend. You should do end-to-end encryption everywhere. And you got to remember that part of the problem with this Chinese hacking of the telecom carriers is back in 1994, Congress passed the law because they saw that it was going to be very, very difficult for the FBI and others to go illegally wiretap when they had to. So they forced the carriers to go put a back door in it. The law is called CALEA, CALEA, which you can Google. And for existing equipment, the phone companies got literally truckloads of cash to go retrofit the existing hardware. New hardware was on their dime. But the carriers and the privacy advocates and the security folks have been saying since the beginning that you cannot do this security. It is not possible to build a backdoor that only we can get into. And China just kind of, proved that. So now the FBI is being forced to eat crow they're probably not happy about it, but I would say that the Congress critters who got their phones tapped and the incoming president and his son who got their phones tapped are probably not terribly happy about that fact. So they're saying and encryption is not only okay but good, and it's likely that Congress may still pass some legislation kind of mandating that. So you know and it's more costly for the carriers. Yeah, all kinds of reasons why they didn't want to do it, but they're being forced to do it. You, as a business owner, as a privacy conscious consumer, need to go look at what you're doing and figure out whether or not um, you need to change application to whatever. Again, if you need help, let us know. Next, uh, Russia may have stepped in a pile of duty this time. The continuing saga of what has been called shadow oil tankers. These are tankers that are flagged in kind of weird countries. Um, they've been kind of bypassing the ban on oil, and people have sort of been looking the other way. But there's also we're seeing that some of these shadow tankers are really, really, in addition to moving oil, they're also spying for Russia. And in this case, there's a ship called the Eagle S. It dropped this anchor off of Finland and dragged it for literally 100 miles, snapping some very important undersea data and power cables. The Finnish Navy was not terribly happy with them over this. They detected it basically virtually instantaneously, um, and suggested to the Eagle S that they put into port in Finland. I think kind of, hey, this helicopter gunship, which is hovering over your bow, we'll give the order to open fire if you don't cooperate. So I think that's kind of, how, they suggested to the Eagle S to come into port. When it came into port, they discovered that it was missing its anchor, the one that had dragged for 100 miles. Unfortunately, for them, the Navy, with, I assume, underwater drones, were able to find the anchor, find the drag mark, and bring it up to the surface, which is not good for Russia. I also assume that the Navy was able to stop the crew from destroying, probably, I mean, they may have been able to destroy some stuff, but helicopters move pretty quick. So, it's likely they boarded the ship pretty quickly, and the crew did not have a lot of time to destroy a lot of the spy gear. So I'm guessing that for the West, that's probably a nice intelligence coup in addition to embarrassing the hell out of Putin. And the company that owns one of the cables has petitioned the Finnish court to seize the ship as damages for the cable. So we'll see what's going on here, but not good for Russia, embarrassing. And with new sanctions of the United States just put in place, that shadow fleet is really having second thoughts about whether or not they want to get crosswise with the United States and potentially lose their vessel and their cargo. In the breach department, K through 12 software maker Power School lost data on 50 million kids. And remember, Congress is really nervous. They always, it's about protecting the kids. So I'm assuming that the attorneys general in a bunch of states are going to be suing these guys because, after all, it's about protecting the kids. I think the vendor's solution to their problem of these crooks stealing the data, by the way, that represents 50 million kids and 17,000 school districts, was to bribe the crooks not to sell the data. Well, history tells us, if we think about Change Health, then when they paid their $22 million, the hacker said, well, that's pretty good. We like that. How about you pay us another $22 million? And then they didn't actually delete the data. So, we shall see here what's going on, but I wouldn't want to be them. On the other hand, if your school uses Power School, know that all your kids' information, including personal information, and if they have some kind of individualized instruction program, IEP, or if they have any kind of medication, all that stuff was compromised. And next in the breed department, The weed dispensary Stizzy warned that they lost data. And I remember they're required to capture government issued IDs like driver's license and passports. All that was compromised. And so anybody who bought weed in their stores in a number of cities likely had their identity documents stolen. So that's not great. The company doesn't want to store an identity document, but the government is making them as a way of checking compliance. So, this is going to occur in other cases where websites and businesses are forced to collect data they don't want or don't need, um, and they don't spend the money to protect it. Another place where we're going to start seeing it, and depending on what the Supreme Court says, is adult websites where some states, predominantly red states, have said you need to provide the website with an adult government-issued ID before you can get access to the site. And, I'm assuming they're going to have to store it because you're not going to want to do this every time you log into the site. So who knows how that's going to, but assume that these things are going to get compromised and the size of the databases are going to be ridiculous. Next, the House Representatives actually did something useful, well, sort of useful. They fired up a task force on AI last year, and they built a pretty interesting piece of work. They produced 85 recommendations in 15 different areas. But now the hard work starts, which is okay. So you got all these recommendations. How do we turn these into laws? And we'll see what the next House does, because some of them are not easy to fix. Next, a gift from the current president to the next president. The current administration has exposed a number of critical cybersecurity issues related to China's hacking and risks to U.S. national security, which I assume the next administration will use as a baseball bat over China's head to get their attention and say, we're going to do really nasty things to you if you don't cooperate and stop doing all this crap. So we shall see, but at least they got some really good ammunition. Next, the feds launched last week what they're calling the Cyber Trust Mark for Internet of Things devices. And Internet of Things devices could be like security camera, a baby monitor, a smart TV, smart refrigerator, smart dishwasher, whatever. All those things that basically have wireless connectivity out to the outside world. The spec is not quite fully baked yet, but it's pretty good. And I think that, they're going to start a campaign to get people to start looking for this trust mark, and it'll tell people, like, how long it's going to be supported, which is a big thing, right? If I buy this thing now, are you going to drop support for it next year? So I have to, either not care about security or throw it away. We shall see. But that sounds promising. And this week's Security News Bites, the New Orleans truck terrorists used a pair of Meta Ray-Bans to surveil the French Quarter on bicycle. We now have videos of him doing that. Nobody probably knew what he was doing because, unlike the old Google camera from years ago, this actually is pretty subtle. But it does point to what this new technology lets you do. The Oath Keepers and American Patriots 3 got hit by an insider attack, a guy that joined the organization and climbed up the ranks, and then copied all their data and published it. Oops. The UN has passed what a lot of people are calling a flawed cyber crime treaty. It basically plays into the hands of Russia and China. Given the next administration in its past life was not terribly enthralled by the UN, I'd say the odds of the U.S. Senate ratifying it are pretty damn low, which I think is a good thing. But we'll see what happens. That's definitely to watch. Next, people are questioning whether the DoD is doing enough to protect their communications on cell phones in light of what we're seeing here with the telecom carriers getting hacked. Congress is likely to go off and explain to the DoD that they need to do more. And apparently, license plate readers, the automated license plate readers, can be used as a global surveillance tool, because guess what? A lot of this data is being transmitted unencrypted, and people have written software which allows them to strip the stream of data, get the things like the make and model and location and date and time and license plate number, and put down a spreadsheet for you, all nice and pretty. I'm assuming the the vendor of the license plate reader that they pointed to will start encrypting their data, but so far they're not. And I guess as a food for thought, as I mentioned before, if you need help figure out what communications of yours are encrypted or need to be encrypted, certainly reach out to us. And then last but not least, more China. China's a big deal. Until last week, we only knew about AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Lumen, which is the former CenturyLink, as the four carriers that we knew about had gotten hacked. We still don't know all 9 carriers that Ann Neuberger in the White House says were hacked. But now we're also hearing that maybe the FBI quietly is reaching out to as many as 100 companies to tell them they were hacked. But we did hear about 3 more, so we're now up to 7. And the new 3 carriers are Charter, Consolidated Communications, and Windstream. So we'll soon get the other 2, and we'll know the 9. But the question is it 9 or is it really 100? And who are the other 91? So with that, I will let you try to sleep peacefully tonight. But until next time, stay safe and reach out to us if you need assistance. Thanks for listening.